Alright, so time for another flea market find series, or in this case, this particular episode, this is all going to be about a yard sale. And what ended up happening here was a yard sale popped up, and I saw, I think there was some mention of lathe and milling machine and machinist tools. And I knew that that particular Saturday I had to work. And I figured by the time I got over there Saturday afternoon, all the deals would be gone. So I inquired through email with the person running the yard sale whether or not they, what kind of stuff they had in particular as far as measuring tools and things like that, and tooling. And there was a lathe there that I wanted to take a look at because I didn't have any photographs of the lathe. And make a long story short, he was gracious enough to let me come by on a Friday, which worked out great because I literally got in there, I think, before anybody else. A lot of the stuff he was in the process of setting up for the Saturday's yard sale, so he was pulling stuff out when I drove up, and I made sure I got there kind of early on a Friday morning so that not so early that he hadn't pulled anything out, but early enough so that in case anybody other looky-loos came driving by. So he took some time. I really appreciate the fact that he was really busy and was still willing to take time, and it ended up panning out because I ended up taking quite a few items off his hand. The lathe, I told him I couldn't use it. It was a really early one. I can't remember the manufacturer, but later I did some research, found out when they were made, and was able to give him that information so that when Saturday... Oops, camera battery died. That was actually a couple of days ago. Well, I'm back down here. So anyways, yeah, so I gave him some information on the lathe, and then we looked at the mill drill that he had, and once he knew that I wasn't interested in purchasing the mill drill, and he knew that I kind of knew my stuff as far as what things go for, he asked me my honest assessment on what he should be looking to get for the mill drill, and also for an old drill press, a Walker Turner drill press that was a little unusual because it was bolted down. It didn't have a base plate, and it was bolted down to the workshop bench. I think originally it had it was a benchtop drill press, and somebody took the post and unbolted it from the base plate, discarded the base plate, he didn't have it anymore, and bolted it right to a workbench. So kind of an unusual setup there. So that was going to kind of make that a little bit of a hard sell, unfortunately. He had another one that was complete, but he was going to keep that one. So anyways, when we went into the room where the mill drill was, looked around through a few drawers, and there was quite a few items that were over with the mill drill, and he said, yeah, he's going to pretty much keep those with the mill drill, which is a good idea. That way, when somebody buys it, they'll be able to have some tooling and be able to get started right away on doing some projects. But I went through some boxes and some drawers, and I did find a couple of items. I found this pair of V-blocks, which have the black oxide coating on them, or whatever this coating is, which makes them look to me like they are, not shop made, that these are commercially made, but I could find absolutely no markings on them whatsoever. But they're nice long ones, and they've even got the holes in them for a rod by the looks of it, but I didn't find the rod. But I thought, well, just a nice little pair of V-blocks. And this 1, 2, 3 block, which does look shop made, and there was only one of them. This little box right here, which says number 5M Desmond Hex Huntington Cutter. On the back it says the Desmond Stephen Manufacturing Company, made in the United States of America. So what's inside here are these little wheels. So what we got is looks like a spur on a looks like the little wheel on a set of spurs from the Wild West. and a little washer, and another one, and a washer, and another one, and then I'm thinking maybe there might be a washer missing from the set. But in looking at these, it occurred to me that these might be replacement cutting wheels for a dressing tool for a grinding stone. So here's my dresser wheel that I tool for dressing grinding stones, and it's got these little wheels on it right here that sure look just like these, only a lot smaller. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to make of those. But I knew that he wasn't going to want much for them, so I threw them in to the little pile I put together. And then this little Starrett box, cross test level number 136, and that's what's in here, is this little level. And actually looks like it's in pretty good shape. And I actually don't know what this is for, because it's interesting that it's got the flats on the bottom here. So I guess you use this to level something in two directions simultaneously. But hey, anything in the original Starrett box in good condition is going to be worth something, right? So, but since I don't have one of these, I'll probably end up keeping this. So I ended up cutting a deal. I think I got all of this stuff for about $10. So I thought that was a pretty good deal. Then I spotted this thing up on a shelf, and a lot of people might not know what this is, and the guy didn't know what it was, but I recognized it right off the bat as this is a, I'm not sure if they call this a generator or a magneto, but it's the unit that generates the electricity in a very old hand crank telephone. And this is what they call a 5-bar, because it's got 5 magnetic bar magnets. And what you've got inside here is you've got I think that might be technically an armature, because it's got a winding on it. And what happens is, a little noisy, but when you spin this fast, it should generate a voltage on these two screw terminals right here. And so, yeah, that needs a little attention. But if somebody was restoring an old phone that used one of these and didn't have it, this might have some value to them. So I decided to take a chance on this. I bought this for $5. I already went on eBay and looked, and it turns out that the prices on these kind of vary all over the place. So I'm not quite sure, what this one is particularly worth, but I feel pretty confident that I'll be able to get my $5 and maybe more out of this when I finally decide to sell it. So I've got one more non-machinist item that I scooped at this yard sale and to show you before we get back to the rest of the stuff that I purchased. So I spotted this on the shelf there, and he had no idea what this was, and at first I didn't know what it was, but I just knew that it was an old electric motor, and it says Edison Universal Motor, and it's got a number on it, and then it says down here, it says Thomas Alva Edison Eddyphone. Okay, so what this is an old electric motor out of a device called an Eddyphone. And I just thought it was a really neat looking piece for several reasons. First, of course, it says Edison on it, and it's got Thomas Alva Edison on it, which is neat. It's got this centrifugal weight system over here to help regulate the speed. And then it's got a variable resistor over here that you slide this band up and down to change the electrical resistance. And then on top here, okay, it's got this really old cloth tape and this switch on it here. And on top here is this switch that says AC-DC or DC-AC. And when you flip it that way, it's AC, and you flip it this way, it's DC. So this motor harkens back to a time in the history of our power distribution, electrical distribution network, when we were going through a transition Early on, when Edison invented the light bulb, he envisioned sending electricity to people's homes to light his light bulbs using DC power, DC voltage. And the problem with direct current is that direct current can't be sent over wires over long distances. There's just too much loss involved. So his idea to overcome this was to have small generating plants on each block or each street. So basically you'd have a small plant that powered, a handful of houses, and then the next street over would have another power plant doing the same thing. And that's that's what he actually thought would be the wave of the future, that everybody would have electricity in their homes doing that. Well, along came a genius named Nikola Tesla. And Nikola Tesla, what Nikola Tesla did was he invented the AC generator, and basically alternating current. He's the father of alternating current. And what you can do with alternating current is alternating current can be sent through a transformer to step up or step down the voltage. So you have what's called transformer action that you can do, and with alternating current. So he realized that by stepping up the voltage to a very high voltage, you could send that voltage over the wires over long distances with less loss. So basically, I think it was like Westinghouse might have been the company that, I don't know if they bought his patents or licensed his patents, but make a long story short, Nikola Tesla invented the first big generators that were used like at Niagara Falls and that kind of thing to generate AC power and send it miles and miles away from the generating plant. And I think Edison initially really opposed this. I think there was a whole story about him going around the country and electrocuting animals and things with AC current in an attempt to show how dangerous AC was and why we should shun AC and stick with his good old DC. So anyways, I got this for $5 because I had no idea what the value was and took a chance on it. And it turns out the last one of these that sold on eBay, I think it brought over $100. So that was probably a running one. I have no idea if that one runs. And I might maybe make a video at some point where I actually wire that up and try and throw some power to it and see what happens. So there was an old Craftsman toolbox in the garage that I wasn't interested in, but when I was looking through the drawers I found a bunch of dial indicators, but they were all pretty rusty and in bad shape. And I've got so many dial indicators I didn't even bother with those. And then I looked through some of the other drawers, and then I came across a drawer that had a bunch of taps in it and reamers. So what I ended up doing in that particular situation is I offered him and got this entire box for $20. So I'm just going to pile these together real quick. Alright, let's start with the taps. We got mostly straight taps. There's a big adjustable one. There's a small adjustable one. There's another small adjustable one. There's one with like a pilot on it, and then that's a Morse taper. There are some straight ones that are Morse taper. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I got 23 reamers of various sizes. Figure I'd value those at only probably about 25 cents a piece at this point. And I got several tap handles. This one, if it didn't have so much surface rust on it. Oh, actually this is broken. Looks like it's missing a jaw. Oh, I like them apples. I didn't even notice that. Well, it doesn't matter. I just threw it in. It wasn't like I bought this box for this tap handle. Although this looked like one of the nicer ones in the bunch. This is Now it's made in the USA. I can't read the name. There's some little tiny tap there, and this is a more modern looking tap handle. This one's a Cobalt. Oh, like that company that they sell tools at Home Depot. A little gear puller. Another tap handle. That one's funkified. Alright, so this stuff here is just let's see, that looks like a letter punch. Can't quite see what letter it is. Actually, well, it doesn't look like it doesn't have an, maybe it's just a little punch somebody was using. And a little straight reamer. Here's a little Morse taper cutter of some type. The smaller version of a Morse taper cut. Yeah, that's actually a drill bit that was ground really funkily. That's probably what this was originally. Same thing with that. Just a metal rod, a little tiny straight reamer. The only Morse taper drill bit that doesn't look like it's been completely molested. A masonry drill bit. And another drill bit that was something weird was done to it, ground to a fine point. And then in here, this is a big 4-flute drill bit. That is sharp. But the end's been reground, and whoever ground this didn't do such a great job. Nah, actually I guess it's not so bad. Anyways. And then a couple of thread gauges. Can't quite make out who makes that one. Got some rust on it. And this one's in a little bit better shape. I also can't make out who makes that one either. So I figure with the little gear puller here, and the few odd tap handles, and these reamers, and this big 4-foot drill bit, this is kind of junk here. I figure it'd be okay if I paid $10 for that, which means I gotta have $10 worth of taps left in here, and I think I did okay, because there's some. This whole box contains the rest of the taps that I get for $10, and there's some good sized ones in here. You know, some pretty big taps. This one here is a big one with fine threads on it, but it's got a strange shank on it, so I'm not sure how you're supposed to grip that one and turn it. There's also, I saw some that had really fine threads on them. Not popping up right on. There's a little drill bit. Oh, there it is. Look at that. The threads on that were so fine that at first I thought it was a reamer. So I think I got $10 worth of taps there. So I had bought another lot. I put together a big pile and bought that lot, and then that was pretty much the end of my dealings. And what ended up happening was I loaded up all my stuff and left there, and I drove about 20 minutes away, stopped and had lunch at a Wendy's. And while I was there and I was mentally going through the stuff I had bought in my head, I realized I had forgotten to empty out that drawer full of taps and reamers that I just showed you. So I decided to drive back there and get those, and in doing so, when I got back there, turns out he had gone into another area. He had a little shed in a box type thing out in his driveway that he hadn't gone through yet, and he had unearthed a plastic drawer unit that had, in one of the drawers, he had more of his machinist stuff, and he had some micrometers and stuff that he wanted to keep. And I've got quite a few micrometers. I really tried to get a micrometer off him. It was a Starrett with a satin chrome finish that was like brand new in the box. It was a small one that had these discs on it, and it had a little loop to put your finger through to hold it. I had never seen one like that, and I thought it was really interesting. I didn't have enough money left on me to buy that and this other item. It turns out I should have left this item and bought that item, because when I got home I found out that the Starrett micrometer, the unusual one that he had, was in fact what's called a paper micrometer. It's actually for measuring the thickness of paper, and it's used in the paper industry. Well, it turns out that micrometer trades for around 70 bucks on eBay. So it's just an unusual one, I guess. What I ended up buying and spending my last 20 bucks on, because he had unearthed it and I hadn't seen it prior to that, was he actually had 4 tachometers. The company he worked for, he was in sales, and they sold diamond abrasive grinding wheels, and he thought it was important for his salespeople to be able to check, I guess, the RPMs on the machines that these wheels that they were selling were going to be on. So he had over the years put together a collection of tachs, and I think 2 of them were digital tachometers, and I kind of figured he was going to want more money for those. And then one of them was, I forgot who made it, but it was kind of like cheesy, plasticky, even though I think it was made in Germany. And then there was this one. This case says Rigo on it. I think he said he bought this when he was in Spain or somewhere. And what's inside here is a Jaquet, J-A-Q-U-E-T, tachometer. And this says made in Switzerland. It's got this nice big easy to read glass face, and the body on this one is metal. It seems like it's pretty well made. I also like the fact that this one had more little attachments here. It's got this little thing of oil. Oh, that's cute. It had more attachments to go on it. So it's got like this little cup. Rubber's a little funky on it, but it's got this little cup to go on the end of something. And then there's also, we got here, this a little nub. Here's a little point. And here's a little wheel. And then so you got this rod, and I don't know if this is broken or what the deal is, or if I'm just not working it correctly. Must be a way to... Oh, I see. Okay, so this is like a range. Drill bits. Battery's dead. There we go. Alright, so that probably works. I'm just not spinning it fast enough. So this little doohickey here, if I'm reading this correctly, it looks like this can go up to 50,000 RPM. And the low range is 30 to 150. And the next range from that is 100 to 500, then 300 to 1500. So looks like I could use this on the lathe if I wanted to. But I already have that little thing that I used the other day. It actually works pretty well, so I don't know if I'm going to keep this or not. Years ago I got one like this made by another company, but I can't find it. I have no idea where it is, and it was in a black case. And I think I may have actually sold it on eBay, not thinking that I would use it. So I don't know. So I gave 20 bucks for this. It seems like it's in pretty good shape. I checked online. This isn't an extremely valuable tachometer. That's why I said I would have been better off if I had spent the money on the Starrett mic. So while I was there were several items that I saw when I first got there, and I kind of looked at them and I kind of like, I was lukewarm to the idea of buying them. And then there were a couple items I was a little more interested in, but when I asked him for a price, what he needed to get for it, he always came back with, well, what do you want to give me? And it was always a, well, what do you want to give me type of thing. And so I kind of got the feel for that. And then lots of times I'd say, well, let me think on that. Or if I gave him an offer and he countered with a higher number, I'd basically say, well, let me think on that. Because I knew I didn't want to get into a situation where I hadn't seen everything and then come back and realize, well, I had bought several items that I didn't really care that much about and missed out on something I was more interested in. So you've already seen what I've bought so far, and then everything that I show you from here on out ended up being stuff that I ended up putting in a pile, and it was an all-inclusive deal where everything in the pile we haggled back and forth on, and I ended up buying the entire pile for $140. So let me start with some of the items here. So this is a vise that I spotted right when I got there, and I thought, well, that's a little interesting, but I don't really need another vise like this, or do I? So this vise, I can't find any markings on it as far as the maker. It's got this decal on here that says Habit London, but I think that's actually a decal for a liquor or something like that. I don't think it has anything to do with the manufacturer of machine tools. There's some surface rust on it, definitely, you know. It's got this handle, it's plastic, but it's got a brass insert, so it's actually pretty decent. And it still moves freely, but this is an angle vise, so you can clamp it down to the milling table, and then you can swivel it, and you've got a degree measurement here for swiveling it. And then in addition to that, there's on this side here we've got degrees of angle, so you can tilt it this way. And then the interesting thing to me is that there's another angle dial right here. So I'm not quite sure why you would want to be able to do that, but apparently you can swivel this separately from this, and that this swivels separately from the base. And then he said that this is the original box that it came in. This is again something he picked up overseas, and used this box to, I guess, transport it back home. But you got to take the knob off to get it in the box, and the knob kind of has to go down the bottom there. But it's a nice little vise. So I mean, if I valued that vise because of the rust on it, if I only valued that vise at $10, I'd say I did pretty good. So we get $130 to go. Next up, we've got this here. This was calibrated and certified back in 1991 by the looks of it. And this is a nice wooden box, and what we've got in here is we've got a Brown & Sharp depth mic. And I'm pretty sure it's Brown & Sharp. Yeah, it's Brown & Sharp depth mic. The actual depth mic itself, it's got the click stop, it's in good shape, other than having some part numbers. Norton Company. Okay, so this came out of the Norton Company machine shop. Norton Company is in Worcester, Massachusetts, and they are now known as St. Gobain because the St. Gobain Company has bought them out. But Norton, of course, is the famous abrasives manufacturer. So the other problem with this is there's some light rust on some of the rods, but the good news is it looks like this is a complete set. We got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rods, 9 if you count the one that's in there now. So that's a pretty good deal right there. So let's say I stole that at $15. 115 to go.